talking about affection today. We're talking really about the four dominant needs of our heart, the matters of the heart. And over these 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about these four matters of our heart. We talked last week about attention, and how all of us need some form of attention. It's that need to be noticed. It's the part of us that says, hey, I'm here. Today we're talking about affection, and with each one of these needs of the heart, they are deeper. They're more deeply woven into our heart. It's a deeper, more tangible need. Today we're talking about affection. And then next week we're going to talk about appreciation, and then the following week we're talking about acceptance. So with each week these needs of the heart, the matters of the heart build. Today let's talk about affection. What is affection? If we were to break it down and I were to ask this group, what do you think affection is? Probably we'd have a wide variety of answers. It'd be everything from, touching someone with love, or, holding hands, in public. I remember in high school we had no PDA, public displays of affection. You guys remember that? Such a ripoff. Peg and I, if you're new to fellowship, you don't know this. If you've been around, you're sick of hearing about it. But at any rate, Peg and I met in the 6th grade. It's ridiculous. We met in the 6th grade. I fell completely in love with her in the 6th grade. Never stopped loving her. And, we lived out now 28 years of marriage, I think. 28 years. And so we dated all through junior high, all through high school. And we were the couple who were constantly getting in trouble for PDA. So I recognize I have a resentment against PDA. But I also understand, being the father of teenagers, how important it is to have rules against PDA. We not only have rules in our house against public displays of affection, but we also have rules against private displays of affection. But affection is, it's that really interesting link that expresses a connection between you and another person, or between you and a particular thing. So affection is something given or received, something we give or receive as an expression of our connection to a person or to a thing. You just gave a public display of affection to the band by clapping and standing and clapping. You are expressing your appreciation or your affection for their help and their acknowledgement of the men and women who serve our country. You express that. You express the connection with them. You express your connection with the song, which is a thing. You express the connection with freedom, which is not a person, it's a thing. So affection is simply when we give something to someone or to something that expresses the link that exists between us. That's one of the matters of the heart. We need connection. We need affection in our lives. Sort of a long history in our family about my relationship with our cat, with our family cat. I was sabotaged when I was on a trip about 8, 9, 10 years ago now, maybe. When my wife called me and said, hey, we're down here at the cat adoption place, and the kids want to adopt a cat. And, I was on the road, so I stepped out of the meeting to take the phone call, and I was under pressure, and she's like, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't have time to think about this right now, so you know what? Whatever you think is best, I guess just let's just do that. Mistake. Mistake. I'm not anti-cat, and I'm not anti-dog, I'm not anti-pet. I had all of those growing up. I had a dog, King. He was an awesome dog growing up. I had a cat, Queenie. She was awesome growing up. I had a bird at one time, which I got tired of and fed to Queenie. But anyway, but over the years, I've come to love this cat. And I never thought I could really feel affection for a cat, but I've come to love the cat. And part of the reason I do is because she's so loving towards our kids. And sometimes cats can be unloving towards other human beings. But she's so loving towards our kids, especially my youngest daughter who has special needs, and she will let my daughter carry her around, and squeeze her and hold her, and, her arms are sticking straight out, and legs are hanging down. It's just insane what she will allow to be done to herself for the cause of affection between my daughter and this cat. And the affection's grown for me and this cat. I now feel affection for the cat, and I express it. I demonstrate my connection to me and the cat. Oftentimes when I come upstairs and the cat is sleeping on my side of the bed, my former display of connection was something of a wrong bed, cat. Now it's a more gentle, sort of loving, why don't you sit down here, sweetheart? And there's displays of connection that demonstrate affection. Sometimes I even find myself speaking to my cat in a high-pitched voice. Oh, you're such a nice cat. And then I'm like, what's wrong with me? I love this cat. And every now and then I'll feed it. It'll wake me up in the morning, and I'll actually feed it food. And then oftentimes, as a display of my affection for my cat, I will have my son change his litter box. Because of my love for the kitty. Let me ask a question. This will be really interesting. When we think about having connection between a person and a thing and expressing the connection, expressing it, let me ask you a question. Show of hands, you've got to be honest here, okay? Sunday morning, honesty in church. How many of you at some point in your lifetime had a favorite baby blanket? Raise your hand. Yep. Those of you that didn't, I apologize. We have them available for you. Because you missed an important part of life. Man, I remember it. I remember my baby blanket. It had one of those silky little borders all the way around. You used to rub it, and rubbed it so much that that's all that was left of it. I think my mom still has it. Just the border. That's all that's left. Just the border. Rubbed everything else right out of it. But it's amazing, isn't it, to watch our kids connect to an inanimate object like a blanket. We get it with a cat, at least there's a living presence there, but they become connected to a blanket. For some of us that never got connected to a blanket, we find connection in other inanimate things, like cars, motorcycles. You hear some guys talk about their love for their motorcycle. If they wouldn't have, they call it her. Right? God, you should have seen her today. She was awesome. Who are you talking about? Why? No, my bike, man. We express connection. I remember getting my first car, and golly, it was a beater. It was a 1968 Volkswagen. And it was like 12 different colors, but I still washed it, polished it, shined it, I love that car. Talked to it. Sometimes cursed at it, So, there are a lot of ways that we express connection for other people to demonstrate our affection. Now, it's important, I think, that we recognize the distinction between affection isn't necessarily just an emotion, because an emotion is something that we hold on ourselves, and an emotion is actually something that I create inside of myself, often as a result of affection. So if you give something to me as a demonstration of your connection to me, it could be a handshake, it could be a hug, it could be a wave, it could be a smile. If you demonstrate your connection to me in some kind of way, and it affects me in a positive way, then I hold the emotion. So my emotion is the state that I feel as a result of the affection that you demonstrated to me. If your affection to me was negative, then it arouses a negative emotion in me. It's the state that I hold, whereas the affection is actually that demonstration of the connection that exists. So I want to talk to you today about some demonstrations of connection. And this comes from a great book that I'll let you know about at the end of the talk today. But it's written by a guy named Gary Chapman, and he talks about the love languages of our life. And how inside of all of us we have a certain love language. It's the language that we use to communicate affection to someone or something else. We all have a different one. I mean, there's 5 different languages of love. I want to break them down for you just a little bit this morning. We'll probably go into a series about this later in the year, because it's such a great topic for demonstrating effective and healthy relationships. But here's the concept. You speak a certain language as it relates to love. And for you to communicate effectively with anybody in your life, it could be your mate, it could be your children, it could be your teammates at work, it could be your boss, it could be your friends. For you to demonstrate effective affection, you have to communicate out a language they understand. But our tendency is to only communicate in the language that we speak. And if I only talk to you, if all of you guys spoke Spanish, and that's all you spoke was Spanish, and I got up and I spoke English, you'd be sitting out there looking like, this guy, he's got to get it together. He is not talking our language. And oftentimes in our relationships, we do that as it relates to love and affection. We talk to one another in ways that make sense to us, but not necessarily in ways that communicate on the part of the receiver. So, I'm going to help you identify this morning your love language and give you some clues to it. But there are 5 basic love languages. And here's a little test that you can ask yourself related to it as we move forward through this. So, how do I express love to others? What's the ways, if you have somebody in your life and you want to communicate love to them, what's your default? How do you do it? Do you do it by telling them, hey, I just want you to know I love you. Appreciate you. Thank you for what you do. Or is your dominant love language like touch? You reach out and touch. You know, when you stand next to somebody and you're talking to them, you reach out and just put your hand over on their arm, on their shoulder. Just touch them. I have one person I talk to, and sometimes we stand, we talk to each other. They'll put their arm over my shoulder, start rubbing my back a little bit. And I'm not even married to this person. And I'm like, this feels good. Physical touch, that's obviously their love language. Feels good to them. When you love somebody and you give them something as an expression of love, you give them something. Another one of those love languages we talk about today is quality time. Do you focus undivided attention? Or are you a person who gives acts of service? So those are the 5 love languages. They're gifts. Do you give gifts? Time. Do you like to give your focused time and attention? Touch. You physically reach out and connect with someone. You touch. Words of affirmation. Thank you. Do you tell them that you love them? Or maybe acts of service. Do you do something to show your love? So we're gonna break that down. So here's one of the ways that you can figure out what your love language is. How do I express love to others? Here's the second question you can ask yourself. What do I complain about the most? When you think about your most intimate relationships, what is the one thing that you complain about, either out loud or just in your mind? You go, gosh, if he would only do that. If he would only give me more of that. Or if she would only love me like that. This can be a big clue for helping you understand what your dominant language of love is. Here's a third question. What do I request most often? What do I request most often? If in your most intimate relationships, your mate, your spouse, significant other, what do you say to them? What do you request? Hey, would you just hold my hand? You're probably a physical touch person. Hey, can we schedule some time together later this week to just sit down and talk? That's a quality time person. Hey, on your way out to get the cleaning, would you please take the trash to the brown can? You're an acts of service person. So when you request something, that's a clue as to what your dominant love language is. So let's walk through them this morning. Let me break them down for you one at a time, and you can take some notes on yourself. Probably, you will be able to identify what your dominant love language is. Now, it's harder sometimes to find it in our mate or our friend, or it's harder sometimes, but it's pretty easy to find it in ourselves. So here's the first one, words of affirmation. Words of affirmation. So these are those people who love to express and receive love dominantly through words. Remember the quote by Mark Twain? You guys are probably familiar with this. Mark Twain said that I can live 2 months on a good compliment. That's not a words of affirmation person. They can live 2 minutes on a good compliment. They need a compliment every day about something significant, something meaningful. They need to hear words of appreciation. They need to hear words of kindness. They need to hear words that honor certain qualities in them. Words of affirmation, people, they are the people that would say to us, it's not what you said, it's how you said it, right? The tone of voice, the timing, the inflection. All that's very, very important to a words of affirmation person. They're constantly listening. Sometimes they'll even solicit their own compliments, right? Hey, did you see what I did in the yard? Yeah, I did. Looks good. Oh, thank you. Right? Hey, by the way, I cleaned up all the cat stuff. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. They'll solicit their own. The most powerful thing in the life of a words of affirmation person is an unsolicited compliment. When you walk up to them and say, hey, that was awesome. Thank you for doing that. It's like it can carry them for miles. And what's even more powerful than the words of affirmation person, they love to hear the words, I love you, or I appreciate you. What's even more powerful for them is if you explain why you love them, or why you appreciate them. You've probably been in one of those intimate conversations at some point in your life, and maybe your mate said to you, hey, I love you. And if you respond and say, tell me why do you love me? Your words of affirmation person. Now, if you're married to one of these people, these words of affirmation people, or you hang out with one, or you want to get to know one, or you want to marry one, or you think you like one, you got to figure out ways to effectively communicate words that encourage them, bolster them, speak kindly to them, because the danger is that if you insult a person who's a words of affirmation person, they will likely never forget it. It's a damaging wound that they will carry with them the rest of their life. And it can greatly affect your relationship. You know how sometimes in our relationships we have playful banter and we sort of jab at each other, and you get going back and forth. If you're playfully bantering and jabbing back and forth with the words of affirmation person, you are jeopardizing the value and the nature of your relationship with that person. They can't handle that. So if you find somebody that's a words of affirmation person, don't pick at them with words. It can shatter them and damage them for a long, long time. Here's a great passage of scripture in Ephesians chapter 4. It says, don't let even one rotten word seep out of your mouths. Instead, offer only fresh words. I love that. I mean, fresh words. Don't you love being around people that every time you're around them, they're just fresh words are coming out, and you feel like you're just drinking from a stream of just good, clean water. Like, man, I like being around people like that. Only offer fresh words that build others up. That's what encouragement is. When we're building somebody up, encouraging them, we're bringing courage to them when they most need it. That way, your good words will communicate grace to those who hear them. Powerful, powerful thing, words of affirmation. All right, here's the second language of love, and that is acts of service. Now, here's where the language of love starts to play itself out. If you're going to communicate affection to a words of affirmation person, but you are a acts of service person, you're going to and you try to serve them, you try to love them by serving them, you can serve them all day long. You can pick up all their laundry, you can wash their clothes, you can wash their car, you can do a million things around the house for them, and they'll still be saying to you, why don't you ever tell me that you love me? And you're like, I do, I show it every day. And they'll be like, yeah, but why don't you just tell me? Use words. Whereas an active service person, this is the person that says, doing simple things, kind things for me, that's how you communicate love to me. This is the person that's often sort of like going around the house, wiping, cleaning, checklist of all the things that need to be done. They're constantly serving. They're looking for ways to demonstrate love through acts of service. Oftentimes, this acts of service person will feel a sense of love when you take a responsibility away from them that's weighing them down. It could be something simple like vacuuming the house. It could be something simple like making sure that the car tag's not expired. It could be something basic like cooking a meal. If they're an acts of service person, every them that matters to them, that adds value to them, and that takes some of the weight off of them, I promise you they'll feel your affection for them. Acts of service people are those folks that we constantly see, even here at church. They're the ones always stepping up and asking, hey, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? I want to help out. Can I help? Obviously, in a volunteer-based organization, those people are invaluable. And, others of us, we may not have acts of service, and we're sitting around waiting for somebody to step up and get the job done. We're like, man, I'm glad they got that done. I think I'm going to go words of affirmation to them for the good job they're doing. Acts of service. Very, very powerful love language. Now, here's where you have to be careful with the acts of service people. If you make a commitment to an acts of service person to do something for them and you don't follow through on that commitment, it's like a knife across the heart. Right? Hey, I'm going to stop by next week, and when we get together, I'm going to take care of that for you. Oh, okay, awesome. I promise you, they're standing out there waiting for you to come by. And when you don't show, they're like, they don't love me. Laziness in a relationship with an acts of service person, intolerable. Intolerable. They'll cut your throat in the middle of the night because they're like, I can't deal with this anymore. Can't deal with a lazy person anymore. What happens with acts of service people is if you make a commitment to them and you don't follow through on that commitment, or you're unwilling to serve in a need that they might feel like would be valuable for them, what you're really saying is your feelings don't matter. Your feelings don't matter. So, here's a great passage of scripture about service. It's Galatians chapter 5. My brothers and sisters, you were chosen to be free. Now remember, Paul's writing this to a culture where people were often owned by other people. They were slaves. And so he says, hey, you've been chosen to be free. You're chosen for freedom. But don't use your freedom as an excuse to live in sin. Now, how would freedom be living in sin? Well, look at the next phrase. Instead, serve one another in love. So a lack of extending service to benefit somebody else and helping someone else is actually sin, because what we're doing is we're acting in selfishness, self-centeredness. So Paul says, hey, if you want to live free, then serve one another. Well, the acts of service person loves that. If you're sitting out there and you just wrote that verse down, you're probably an acts of service person. You love to serve other people, and you feel love when other people serve you. All right, here's the third one. Gifts. Gifts. And this is sometimes misunderstood, but talk about gifts. This person receives love from other people when you give them a gift. Now, don't confuse this with materialism. And when you think of giving somebody a gift, don't think of it so much in terms of the financial value of the gift. The value of the gift is determined when you have thoughtfully given them something that you know will mean something to them, and it causes them to go, you know what? They remembered me. They thought of me. This love language is really important because it doesn't take a lot to communicate to this person love, but it takes the right things, the right gifts. They don't have to be big, man. Again, you have to come home with a new car every month and go, hey, love you. No, it's small. It's like, hey, I love you. My God, you do love me. You bought me a whole cup of coffee. That's awesome. With my name on it. That's so thoughtful. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it has to be appropriate. It has to be specific to that person. You know that if you're a person who collects things, and you know that person collects things, if you buy that person something for their collection, cha-ching. Great statement of affection and love for that person. Now here's the danger. If you miss that person's birthday or anniversary, or like You stop at Walgreens, you pick something up off the Arizona tourist rack, you're in trouble. They're going to get that and go, oh, you thought of me on your way over. How nice. It's funny, this is one of my dominant love languages, is gifts, and I used to travel a lot out of the country, and it took me forever to learn this, because this is not my wife's love language. It is not hers. And because we speak to others out of our own language, every time I would go on a trip, I would visit whatever local market existed in that country, and I would buy all kinds of stuff for her and the kids and bring home all this local, handmade, handcrafted alpaca rugs and woven baskets and marble statues and beaded necklaces and all kinds of stuff. And I'd come home and I'd give it to her and I'd be like, honey, I love you. And she'd be like, really? I'm like, are you kidding me? It took me 2 hours to buy that alpaca rug. I had to work hard to get this guy to come off his price because he said it was his favorite alpaca. I didn't understand that was not her love language. But it was mine, so I thought if it's good enough for me, she'll love it. But it wasn't to be. But here's a great passage in 2 Corinthians about giving. Paul's talking here about giving money specifically. He's actually talking about giving out of our time of poverty, but it applies to giving any kinds of gifts, and specifically applies to demonstrating and communicating love to people with the gift with the language of gifts. Giving grows out of the heart. Well, that's so true, isn't it? And the person who speaks the language of gifts, that they know that. You know what? You guys remember? I'm going to date myself and some of you here, but remember those little pencil machines we used to have in junior high school? And they had the names of professional teams on them, football teams, whatever. I remember somebody, Dallas Cowboys is actually the only professional football team. And I remember somebody, I kept putting, quarters in those machines trying to get the Dallas Cowboys pencil. I never could get one. Finally, somebody gave me one. I felt like I had won the lottery. It was a 25-cent pencil. But it changed my life.